I was talking with a family member this past weekend, and they sounded very down and very sad. And I asked what was wrong. And she was describing to me that she was just so disheartened and sad by all the tragedy and the news and what was happening in the world. She could not find a way to pull herself out of it. And I said to her, I really do understand where you're coming from. It's been hard for so many people, but you have to get off the couch, one, and then you have to turn off the news. And at first she just recoiled and said, no, I can't turn off the news. And I said, yes, you can, trust me. And so sure enough, she did, and a few days later she called and she says, you're right, I had to turn off the news. I'm at least handling things a little bit better now. How did you know that? Well, my name is Kimberly Faith, and I am on a quest to help women learn how they have far more power than they think they do. And I had a model that I have used for my entire life that has made such a huge impact that I want to share with you today. And I want to show you why she had to turn off the news. If you have ever had a day where you have felt powerless, out of control, you felt like you were being hit with one thing after the other and you could hardly keep your head above water, then you're going to want to hear and stay tuned for what this model is, because it can make a significant impact. See, Einstein once said is that you can never solve problems at the same level of thinking that created them. And that quote has always touched my heart, and it's very, very true. Because what I want to show you is that we have 3 levels of thinking available to us, but most of us only use 1, maybe 2. And this is where the power lies. So I want you to think about the first level of thinking, the events level of thinking. Events level of thinking is a little bit like dots on a graph. It seems random. It seems like you're just being hit left and right. You can't see how any of it fits together because it's all you can do to get from one event to the next event to the next event. And trust me, I understand that. After having just gotten back from a vacation that was very, very intense with my husband, that we rode a Harley all the way across country, I was exhausted by the time I got back. We get back, our 100-year-old mother-in-law had some things going on, we were hit with that. My husband accidentally breaks his ankle, spend all of a day on the emergency room dealing with surgery. My daughter gets home from her study abroad program. All of a sudden, we have to deal with financial issues for the university. And I'm thinking by the end of the day, I mean, you can almost feel it when the events are getting to you because it feels heavy and it feels hard, and you can barely even lift your head because of all of this coming at you. Well, that's a very powerless place to be. And I'm going to show you the fact that we have another level of thinking available to us. The next level of thinking is called the patterns level of thinking. We actually are pretty good at that. If we can pause for a moment and not be so sucked into what the events are, we're able to lift our eyes and we see, this is how we connect the dots on a graph. That I'm not going to overreact to this particular issue because I know it happens every Friday. Or even my girlfriends and I will joke with each other how that you always seem a little bit more sensitive to life around that monthly cycle for us girls, right? Well, we even have to tap ourselves on the shoulder and say, don't take yourself too serious right now. Tomorrow is a new day. So we have patterns in life. We know that if we invest money, supposedly, in the stock market, over time, it will get better. That's what patterns have taught us. So most of us do pretty well with those 2 levels of thinking. The reality is there is a 3rd level of thinking that people don't realize, and that is called the structure level of thinking. Now, before you have any preconceived notions about structure, it's really very simple. It is anything that is tangible or intangible that influences our behavior. For example, I can predict how my students are going to enter into a particular classroom based on where the door is. Most of my students will enter the room by the door. Some might try to go through the wall, but for the most part, they will go through the door. All kinds of structures in our life. Now, how does this tie back to what we talked about with the news? Well, the news media has become a significant structure that is impacting our behavior. And if we allow ourselves to be sucked into that, because see, remember my family member, she didn't understand why she was depressed. I understand we still have all of this going on in the world, but for her and her well-being to move forward each day, she had to, in her case, remove a structure that was influencing her behavior, and it allowed her to lift her eyes and see life from a different perspective. Now, for any of you that have actually been around and see this new Pokemon Go craze that has people walking around looking at their phones, and they're only focused on their phones right there because they're trying to get the points of that little figure that they're trying to get. I hear friends and colleagues say, what are these people doing? They're not even looking around and watching traffic and watching all of these things going on. They're missing that there's a lot more happening than just what's on their phone. Well, I want you to kind of think about that in reflection of your life. When we get sucked into the events level of thinking and that's all we see, we only see a small piece of the world. My challenge for you is this week to lift your eyes and at least begin to look at maybe the patterns that are happening around in your life, and more importantly, what structures can you put in place to be able to drive your behavior. I have a lot more to share with you on this subject because this fundamental model has so much power to influence your life. So here's the first thing that I want you to do, is when you are facing those days where they feel overwhelming and powerless and frustrating, I want you to tell yourself, you know what? I am just at the events level of thinking right now. I want you to breathe. I want you to lift your eyes and say to yourself, I am not powerless. I can choose a different level of thinking. And while I may not understand exactly how to do that yet, I make a commitment to try to figure that out. So that's the very first thing I want you to do. The second thing I want you to do is I want you to take a look at some of the things, some of the structures that are influencing your behavior. If you're watching too much news, turn it off. Give yourself a break. If you're finding that the world looks colorless, then go look for something happy and uplifting, and look for a structure that will bring a smile on your face and soothe the spirit. So much power lies in this model, and I cannot wait to share with you the rest. It has changed my life, and I know it can change yours too.